Every night, exactly at 11 o'clock, he would show up like clockwork. The same corner table, the same black coffee, no sugar. Sophia had memorized his routine for weeks, but they'd never exchanged more than polite nods. There was something haunted in his eyes, a sadness that seemed to follow him like a shadow. She didn't know that he ran a billion-dollar company during the day or that he was raising a 6-year-old daughter on his own. But tonight, everything would change. If this story has already sparked your curiosity, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments, where are you listening to this story from? Your support is what keeps these touching stories coming to life. The Midnight Bean had become Sophia's sanctuary in a city that still felt foreign against her skin. 3 months since she'd packed her life into 2 suitcases and moved here, running away from memories that suffocated her in her hometown. The cafe that never closed offered something she desperately needed: anonymity and purpose. "Another cup of coffee, table 7, she murmured to herself, balancing the tray as she navigated between the sparse late-night tables. It was 11:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the typical night crowd was settling in. College students hunched over books, night shift workers taking a break, and some lonely insomniacs seeking silent companionship. But there was one customer who intrigued her more than he should. Table 12, right corner, always the same chair with his back to the wall. Oliver, she'd discovered his name when he paid with a credit card the first week, arrived every night at exactly 11 p.m. Not 10:58, not 11:02, exactly 11 p.m. Black coffee, no sugar, she would whisper to herself before he even placed his order, watching him settle in with precise, calculated movements. Always impeccably dressed, even at that hour. Dark hair slightly tousled as if he'd run his fingers through it all day. And those eyes, green like autumn leaves, but heavy with a melancholy she recognized. The first week, Sophia tried to ignore him. He was just another regular customer, nothing more. But there was something about the way he held his cup, both hands wrapped around the white porcelain as if he were warming himself with more than just temperature, that made her look twice. "Good evening," she said in the second week, placing the coffee on his table with a professional smile. He looked up, and for a moment she felt as if she were truly being seen, not just as the waitress, but as Sophia, person, woman, lost soul recognizing another lost soul. "Thank you," he replied, and his voice was softer than she'd imagined. There was politeness there, refinement, but also weariness. The kind of weariness that came from carrying too much weight on your shoulders for too long. The following weeks developed into a silent ritual. She would bring the coffee without him having to ask. He would thank her with a nod that lasted half a second longer than necessary. Sometimes, when she cleaned nearby tables, she could feel his eyes following her movements, not invasively, but as if he were trying to solve a puzzle. Sophia began to notice the details. How he stirred his coffee even without sugar, slow and hypnotic movements. How he checked his phone obsessively but rarely answered calls. How his shoulders gradually relaxed during the first half hour, as if the cafe were his only moment of pause in days that stretched beyond reasonable limits. "He has sad eyes," commented Marcy, her morning shift colleague, in casual conversation. "I saw him leaving when I arrived early today. Looks like he's carrying the world on his shoulders." Sophia nodded, feigning disinterest, but the observation haunted her all day. There was truth in those words. Oliver, even without knowing his last name, she thought of him by his first, was carrying something heavy. She recognized the signs because she saw them in the mirror every day. In the 5th week, something changed. It was a Thursday night, slower traffic than usual. Oliver arrived at his usual time, but there was something different about his movements. Slower, more careful, as if each step required conscious effort. Sophia prepared the coffee with extra attention, making sure it was the perfect temperature. When she approached the table, she noticed he was staring out the window with an intensity that made her hesitate. "Your coffee," she said softly, not wanting to interrupt his thoughts abruptly. He turned, and for the first time she saw something beyond the courteous melancholy. There was gratitude there, real, deep, as if that simple gesture, bringing coffee to someone, was more meaningful than she could imagine. "Sophia," he said, reading her name tag, but pronouncing her name with special care. "Thank you." Not just for the coffee, for being here. The words caught her off guard. There was vulnerability in them, a raw sincerity that made her heart race. She wanted to ask what he meant, wanted to sit down and discover the story behind those tired eyes. Instead, she smiled, a genuine smile, not professional. "You're welcome," she replied, and for a moment the world narrowed to that table, to that silent exchange of mutual recognition. When she walked away, she could feel that something fundamental had changed between them. The silence was no longer just courtesy, it had become a language of its own, loaded with meaning that neither was ready to verbalize. But Sophia knew it was only a matter of time before words would need to be spoken. And for the first time in months, she found herself eager to discover what. The rain started at 10:30 p.m., turning the city into an impressionist painting blurred by the midnight beans windows. Sophia watched the droplets sliding down the glass, creating patterns that dissolved and reformed like hesitant tears. The cafe was emptier than usual. The storm kept people at home, wrapped in blankets and safety. She checked the clock, 10:58 p.m. In 2 minutes, Oliver would arrive. The certainty of this routine had become one of the few fixed points in her life still under reconstruction. But as the minutes passed, 11:05, 11:10, 11:15, an unexpected anxiety began forming in her stomach. Maybe the rain kept him home, she murmured to herself, trying to ignore the disappointment she felt. It was ridiculous to worry about a stranger, even one who had become part of her nightly routine. 11:23 p.m. The door opened with the familiar chime of the bell, followed by the sound of wet footsteps on the wooden floor. Sophia looked up and felt her heart tighten. Oliver was soaked from head to toe, his expensive suit clinging to his body like a second skin. His dark hair was plastered to his forehead, and there was something different about his posture. Shoulders curved not just from exhaustion, but from something deeper. Defeat. He walked to his usual table with mechanical steps, leaving a trail of water on the floor. Sophia noticed he was shaking, not just from cold, but from something that came from within. For the first time in 2 months of silent observation, Oliver seemed completely stripped of his armor of composure. Without thinking twice, Sophia grabbed one of the clean towels they kept behind the counter. Not the small ones they used to clean tables, but one of the large, soft ones that warmed in the cafe's small dryer. She held it against her chest for a moment, absorbing the warmth, before heading to table 12. "Oliver," she said softly, using his name for the first time. He looked up, surprised, and she saw his eyes were red, from rain, exhaustion, or maybe something more. "You're soaked." She extended the towel, and for a moment, both hesitated. It was a gesture that crossed the invisible line they'd maintained between them for weeks. Professional to personal, strangers to something more. "Thank you," he murmured, accepting the towel and wrapping it around his shoulders. Sophia noticed how his hands trembled as he held it. "Let me get your coffee," she said, but when she turned to go, his voice stopped her. "Sophia." There was a quiet urgency in the way he said her name. Could it be different today? The coffee. She turned back, studying his face. There was a vulnerability there that completely disarmed her. "What would you like?" "I don't know," he said, running a hand through his wet hair. "Something warm, comforting, like He hesitated, as if the words were hard to find. "Like what someone would make for a person who matters." Sophia's heart jumped. She nodded slowly, an understanding passing between them without words. "I know exactly what to do." In the kitchen, her hands moved by instinct. Premium coffee, not the regular kind. A pinch of cinnamon, the secret her grandmother had taught her to bring warmth, not just to the body, but to the soul. A small spoon of brown sugar to soften the bitterness. And finally, a small amount of steamed milk, creating a creamy swirl on the dark surface. When she returned to the table, Oliver was still wrapped in the towel, but he'd removed his wet jacket and carefully folded it on the chair beside him. She placed the cup before him, and the aroma of cinnamon rose like a promise. He closed his eyes and inhaled deeply. "Cinnamon," he said, and there was something close to relief in his voice. "My grandmother used to say that cinnamon was like a hug in a cup," Sophia said, surprising herself with her courage to share something personal. For days when the world feels too heavy. Oliver opened his eyes and looked at her with an intensity that made her feel as if she were being truly seen for the first time in months. Today is definitely one of those days. Sophia found herself pulling out the opposite chair and sitting down uninvited. It was a break in protocol, but something about the rainy night's atmosphere made normal rules irrelevant. "Want to talk about it?" she asked gently. He took a sip of coffee and closed his eyes again. "Perfect," he murmured, and she wasn't sure if he was referring to the coffee or the moment. "You have a gift for this." "For making coffee?" "For taking care of people," he said, opening his eyes and meeting hers. "It's a rare gift." Sophia felt warmth rise up her neck. "Maybe I recognize when someone needs care." "And you?" he asked, leaning slightly forward. "Who takes care of you?" The question caught her off guard, touching wounds she thought she'd hidden well. "I take care of myself." "That's lonely," he said with an understanding that suggested personal experience. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But it's safe." They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of rain against the windows creating a bubble of intimacy around them. Sophia watched Oliver drink his coffee, noticing how his shoulders gradually relaxed, how the tension in his face softened. "Why do you come here every night?" she finally asked. He paused with the cup halfway to his lips. "Because it's the only place where I can stop pretending I have all the answers." The raw honesty of the answer hit her like a gentle punch to the stomach. "And you? Why do you work the night shift?" "Because it's the only time I can be invisible," she replied before she could censor herself. They looked at each other across the small table, two strangers who had just shared truths they rarely admitted to themselves. The rain kept falling, but inside the cafe something warm and new was being born. "Thank you," Oliver said, finishing his coffee. "Not just for the different coffee, for seeing me." Sophia nodded, not trusting her voice not to shake. When he stood to leave, still wrapped in the towel, she knew she would never again be the same person she'd been before that rainy night. And maybe, just maybe, neither would he. The following night arrived with a crystalline clarity that contrasted dramatically with the previous evening's storm. Sophia found herself checking the clock more times than was professional, a sweet anxiety settling in her stomach as 11 p.m. approached. The towel Oliver had used was carefully folded behind the counter. She'd washed it twice, but couldn't bring herself to put it away with the others. 10:59 p.m. The door opened, and Oliver entered with his characteristic punctuality, but there was something different about his bearing. His shoulders still carried weight, but not the defensive rigidity from before. He searched for her with his eyes immediately, and when their gazes met, a small but genuine smile touched the corners of his mouth. "Good evening, Sophia," he said, heading to his usual table. "Good evening," she replied, already moving to prepare the coffee, but her hand hesitated over the regular grounds. "Regular coffee or—" "With cinnamon," he said without hesitation. "Definitely with cinnamon." As she prepared the drink, Sophia felt a fundamental shift in the atmosphere between them. The invisible wall they'd maintained for weeks had developed cracks, and through them, something real was beginning to emerge. When she brought the coffee, Oliver gestured to the opposite chair. "Could you spare a few minutes?" Sophia looked around. The cafe was quiet, just two other customers at distant tables, absorbed in their own worlds. "Of course." She sat down, and Oliver wrapped his hands around the cup in that familiar way. "I needed to thank you properly for last night. You had no idea what that gesture meant." "I just made coffee," Sophia said, but her cheeks flushed. "No," Oliver shook his head slowly. "You did much more than that. You saw me when I was broken and you didn't turn away." There was an intensity in his voice that made Sophia's heart race. "Everyone breaks sometimes." "I shouldn't," he said, bitterness touching his words. "At least, not according to the rest of the world." Oliver Morrison, CEO of Morrison Holdings, father of a 6-year-old girl, man who should have everything under control. Sophia blinked, processing the information. Morrison Holdings. She'd seen the name on billboards around the city, one of the region's largest real estate development companies. But what struck her most deeply was the mention of his daughter. "You have a daughter," she said softly. And it wasn't a question. Oliver's eyes filled with something that was part love, part pain. Emily. She's 6 years old, has curly hair like her mother's, and asks about everything, literally everything. Why the sky is blue, why birds fly, why Daddy looks sad sometimes. And what do you tell her about the last question? Oliver took a long sip of coffee before answering. I lie. I tell her I'm just tired from work. Sophia waited, sensing there was more coming. Her mother died 2 years ago, he continued, his voice growing rougher. Cancer. Clara fought for 18 months, and Emily spent half of her little life watching her mother waste away. When Clara died, Emily asked if it was her fault for wishing Mommy's pain would stop. Tears burned Sophia's eyes. My God, Oliver. Since then, I've been pretending I'm okay. For Emily, for the employees, for the world. Because if I fall apart, who's going to take care of her? Who's going to keep the company running, jobs secure, life moving forward? But you're not okay, Sophia said gently. No, he admitted, and there was relief in his voice at speaking the truth. I'm lost. I wake up every morning and pretend I know what I'm doing, but the truth is I'm just surviving one day at a time. Sophia reached out instinctively, covering his hand on the table. His fingers were warm, calloused, real. And that's why you come here, to stop pretending. Here in this cafe at 11 p.m. I can just be Oliver, not the CEO, not the father who should have all the answers, just a man who misses his wife and is afraid he's failing his daughter. You're not failing her, Sophia said with conviction. The fact that you care so much proves that. Oliver looked at their joined hands on the table. Clara used to say that love sometimes looks like worry dressed up as fear. She sounds like she was a wise woman. She was. He looked up. She would have liked you too. Clara had a sixth sense for genuine people. Sophia felt something warm and complicated expanding in her chest. Why are you telling me this? You don't really know me. Maybe that's exactly why, Oliver said. You don't have expectations about who I should be. Last night, when I was soaked and broken, you didn't try to fix me or give me advice. You just were present. Sometimes that's all someone needs. When was the last time someone was present for you? He asked, echoing her question from the night before. Sophia withdrew her hand, not from discomfort, but because the question cut too deep. I don't usually talk about that. Fair enough. Sorry for pushing. No, it's not that. Sophia took a deep breath. It's just that it's hard to admit that I moved here running away from an engagement that ended when I found out that there were other women. From a family who thought I should forgive and move on because men make mistakes. From a whole life where I always took care of everyone except myself. Oliver nodded slowly. And now you're rebuilding. Trying to, she corrected. Some days are better than others. I understand that more than you know. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the weight of their mutual confessions settling between them like a newly built bridge. Sophia watched Oliver finish his coffee, noticing how he seemed lighter, as if sharing the burden had made it less heavy. Thank you, he said finally, for listening, for not judging me. Thank you for trusting me with your story. When Oliver stood to leave, he hesitated. Sophia, if you ever want to talk, about rebuilding, about difficult days, about anything, I'll be here tomorrow at 11 p.m., she smiled, and it was the first truly happy smile she'd felt in months. I know. And Oliver? Emily is lucky to have a father who cares so much, even when he's struggling. He nodded, too moved to speak, and walked out into the clear night, leaving Sophia with the certainty that something profound and irreversible had changed between them. And for the first time since arriving in the city, she no longer felt invisible. The following 2 weeks unfolded like pages from a book Sophia never knew she was waiting to read. Oliver's 11 p.m. routine had transformed into something much deeper than a simple coffee order. Now when he arrived, his eyes sought hers immediately, and the smile they exchanged carried shared memories and a growing intimacy that neither dared to name. Cinnamon coffee for the gentleman at table 12, Marcy teased on a Thursday afternoon, while Sophia prepared for the night shift. He knows you're working today, doesn't he? The way he looks at you could melt sugar. Sophia pretended to ignore the comment, but her cheeks flushed. It was true that something had changed. Small gestures had multiplied. Oliver always left a generous tip with a simple note. Thank you for the care. The cinnamon saved my day again. You make the nights less lonely." And she, in turn, had begun drawing small hearts in the foam of his coffee, a silent secret that made them smile like conspirators. That night when Oliver arrived, there was something different about his bearing. Less weight on his shoulders, more light in his eyes. He carried a small envelope, which he carefully placed on the table as he sat down. "Good evening, Sophia," he said, and there was a new music in his voice. "Good evening," she replied, already mentally preparing the special coffee that had become tradition between them. "You seem different today, lighter." "Emily made an important discovery today," he said, his eyes shining. "She learned to tie her shoes by herself, and when she managed it, she said, 'Daddy, now I can help you when your hands are too tired to make bows.'" Sophia felt her heart squeeze with tenderness. "She's 6 years old and already thinking about taking care of you." "She's special," Oliver said with evident paternal pride, "and it made me think, maybe it's time to stop protecting her from all real emotions. Maybe she's stronger than I give her credit for." As Sophia prepared the coffee, she realized she was smiling to herself. There was something contagious about Oliver's paternal happiness, a lightness she hadn't seen in him before. When she returned with the drink, he pushed the envelope toward her. "What's this?" she asked, hesitating. "A drawing. Emily made it for the coffee lady who makes Daddy smile." Sophia opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a drawing made with crayons. A female figure with brown hair and a big smile holding a coffee cup. Beside her, a tall man and a small girl holding hands. At the top, in careful child's letters, "For Sophia, who makes magic coffee for Daddy." Tears burned her eyes. "Oliver, this is..." She insisted. Said she wanted to meet the person who made Daddy less grey. He paused. Her words, not mine. "How does she know about me?" "I may have mentioned that there's someone special who makes the best coffee in the city," he admitted, blushing slightly. "And that this person has been important to me." The word special hung between them like an unspoken promise. Sophia traced the drawing with her finger, touched by the innocent generosity of a child she'd never met. "May I sit?" she asked. And when Oliver nodded, she settled into the opposite chair. "Tell me more about her, about Emily." Oliver's eyes lit up in a way Sophia had never seen. "She's obsessed with dinosaurs this month. Last month it was unicorns, before that, astronauts. She wants to be a paleontologist, veterinarian and astronaut all at the same time. Sounds like she has an open mind for possibilities." "Like her mother," he said fondly. "Clara always said the world was too big to choose just one dream." Sophia noticed he spoke of Clara with less pain now, more like a precious memory than an open wound. "Does she still ask about her mother?" "Yes, but differently now. No more 'when is Mommy coming back?' but 'what would Mommy think about this, or would Mommy like my drawing?'" Oliver took a sip of coffee. "Our therapist said it's healthy, that she's integrating Clara's memory into present life instead of living in the past." "You're in therapy?" Sophia asked with genuine curiosity. "We started 6 months ago. Best decision I ever made. Emily needs space to process, and I needed to learn that I don't have to have all the answers." "And what have you learned about yourself?" Oliver studied her for a long moment. "That I had stopped living and was just existing. That Emily deserves a father who embraces life, not just survives it." He paused. "And that maybe, just maybe, I deserve to be happy again." The intensity in his eyes made Sophia's heart race. There was something being said between the lines, a confession that neither was ready to fully verbalize. "Oliver," she began, but he reached across the table, lightly touching her fingers. "I know this is complicated," he said softly. "I know you're rebuilding your life, that you came here seeking peace. But I needed you to know that these nightly encounters have become the best part of my days." Sophia looked at their joined hands on the table. "For me too. I'd like to get to know you better. Outside this cafe, outside these hours. I'd like Emily to meet you if you're open to it." Sophia's heart pounded hard. "Are you sure? Meeting your daughter it's something big." "I know, and I'm not asking for promises or definitions. I'm just asking for a chance to see where this might lead us." Sophia looked at the drawing on the table, at Oliver's hopeful eyes, at the possibilities opening before her like flowers after a long winter. "Yes," she said, surprising herself with her own courage. "I'd like to meet Emily." The smile that took over Oliver's face was like sunrise, slow, warm, transformative, and Sophia knew that, regardless of what happened, she would never forget the moment she decided to stop hiding and start living again. The cinnamon in the coffee had become much more than seasoning. It had become the symbol of something new blooming between them. The following 3 weeks unfolded like a movie in slow motion, each precious moment being savored and stored in memory. What had begun as occasional meetings in the park naturally evolved into something much deeper and intertwined. Sophia found herself gradually being absorbed into the little Morrison family's routine, and the feeling was simultaneously terrifying and comforting. "Is Sophia coming for dinner today?" Emily asked every morning during breakfast, according to what Oliver told her. It was Thursday, and Sophia had spent the last 4 dinners at their house, a house that still carried memories of Clara in the smiling photographs and feminine decorative touches, but was slowly being filled with new laughter and new traditions. The kitchen had become the heart of their growing connection. Sophia discovered that cooking for Oliver and Emily satisfied something deep in her soul that had lain dormant for years. It wasn't just about food. It was about creating moments, about the simple pleasure of watching Emily lick her fingers after trying fresh-from-the-oven cookies, about observing Oliver truly relax for the first time in years. "Almost Mom," Emily had whispered the previous week, while Sophia helped her choose clothes for school. The words were said with such naturalness that Sophia nearly lost her balance. When she asked what Emily had said, the girl just smiled mysteriously and ran downstairs. But Oliver had heard. Sophia saw it in his eyes when she came down for breakfast, a mixture of emotion, gratitude, and something deeper that neither was ready to fully name. On that specific Thursday, Sophia arrived at the Morrison house at 5:30 p.m., carrying ingredients for the lasagna recipe Emily had requested at least 50 times. The girl greeted her at the door as always, but this time there was a special urgency in her movements. "Sophia, Sophia, I have a surprise." Emily practically vibrated with excitement. "A surprise?" Sophia laughed, being pulled by the small hand to the living room. "What's it about?" "I made something special for our family," Emily announced, and then stopped abruptly, blushing. "I mean, for the 3 of us." Sophia's heart squeezed with tenderness. Oliver appeared from the kitchen, drying his hands on a dish towel, and his eyes met Sophia's with a silent communication that had developed between them, a mutual understanding about how to navigate moments when Emily expressed wishes they both secretly shared. "Show her, sweetheart," Oliver encouraged gently. Emily ran to a low table and picked up a drawing notebook. Inside was a series of illustrations telling a story. The first showed Emily and Oliver alone, with dark colors and sad expressions. The second showed Sophia appearing, with a coffee cup in her hand naturally. The following pages showed the 3 of them together in various activities, cooking, playing in the park, watching movies. But it was the last page that made Sophia hold her breath. It was a drawing of the Morrison house, but with details that didn't exist in reality. A porch full of flowers that Sophia had mentioned admiring, a tree in the yard with a swing Emily had dreamed of having, and 3 figures at the front door, 2 big and 1 small, all smiling and holding hands. "This is our house as it could be," Emily explained seriously, "with all the people who make it a home." Sophia felt tears burn her eyes. She knelt down to hug Emily, unable to form words for a moment. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," she finally managed to say. You draw the house as a very happy place." "Because it is happy when you're here," Emily said with the devastating honesty of children. "Daddy laughs more, I laugh more, even Mummy's sad ghosts seem happier." Oliver approached and knelt beside them. "Emily, do you remember what we talked about regarding Mommy? That they're not sad ghosts but happy memories that live in our hearts," Emily recited, "and that she wants us to be happy, even without her." "Exactly. And do you think Mommy would like to know we're happy?" Emily nodded vigorously. "She would like Sophia too, I can feel it." Later, as they prepared the lasagna together, Sophia observed the dynamic that had naturally developed between them. Oliver cut vegetables with meticulous precision, while Emily helped by measuring ingredients with scientific seriousness. Sophia coordinated everything, but in a way that made each person feel essential. "Sophia," Emily said while stirring the sauce, "can I ask you something personal?" Sophia and Oliver exchanged amused glances. Emily had developed the habit of asking permission for questions that were inevitably too deep for her age. "Of course, sweetheart. Have you ever been married?" Sophia paused, the spoon halfway to the pot. "I almost got married once, but it didn't work out." "Why not?" "Sometimes people think they love each other, but they really just like the idea of each other." Emily processed this with the seriousness of a philosopher. "But do you really love Daddy?" The silence in the kitchen was absolute. Sophia felt Oliver's gaze burning on her back, but couldn't turn to face him. Emily's question had touched the core of something both were feeling, but avoiding discussing. "Emily," Oliver said softly, "that's a very personal question." "But it's important," Emily protested, "because if Sophia loves you, and you love Sophia, then she can stay forever and we can be a real family." Sophia finally turned, meeting Oliver's eyes across the kitchen. There was so much unsaid in that look: fear, hope, love, uncertainty, desire. "Love is complicated, Emily," Sophia said carefully, "but I can tell you that I care about you both very much, more than I imagined was possible." "That's almost the same thing as loving, isn't it?" Emily asked hopefully. "Maybe it is," Sophia admitted, her voice almost a whisper. That night, after Emily went to bed, Sophia and Oliver sat on the front porch with coffee cups. Hers with cinnamon, of course. The air was filled with the scent of roses Clara had planted years before, and there was something poetic about how the past and present intertwined in that moment. "About what Emily asked today," Oliver began hesitantly. "Oliver, you don't have to." "I do," he interrupted gently. "Because she's right. About everything." He paused, gathering courage. "I love you, Sophia. Not just as the woman who makes my daughter smile or who brings peace to my nights. I love you as the person who brought color back to our lives." Sophia felt like her heart might explode. "I love you too, both of you, more than I thought I could love again." They kissed there on the porch, surrounded by the scent of Clara's roses and Emily's dreams, knowing they were creating something new and precious. When they separated, Oliver held Sophia's face in his hands. "You've turned our house into a home again," he whispered. And Sophia knew with crystal certainty that she had found exactly where she belonged. But she also knew that the most difficult decisions were still to come. The call came on a Monday morning while Sophia was preparing pancakes for Emily before school. The cell phone rang insistently on the Morrison kitchen counter, and she almost didn't answer. Monday mornings rarely brought good news. "Sophia Martinez." The voice on the other end was professional, confident. "This is Jennifer Walsh from Corporate Hospitality Solutions. We have a proposal we believe would interest you." Sophia gestured to Oliver to continue helping Emily with the syrup while she stepped away to the corner of the kitchen. "How did you get my number?" "Your former supervisor from the chain where you used to work gave us your information. He said you're exactly the type of professional we're looking for." "For what kind of position?" "Regional manager for our new East Coast expansion. We'd be talking about managing 12 premium cafeterias in Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens. Starting salary of $120,000 plus bonuses, full health plan, and a generous relocation package." Sophia almost dropped the phone. It was 3 times more than she made at the Midnight Bean in one of the country's most important cities. It was the kind of opportunity she'd dreamed about years before her life fell apart. Would it be in New York?" "Yes. We'd need you to start in 6 weeks. I know it's fast, but we're launching aggressively. Are you interested in talking?" Sophia looked across the kitchen, where Oliver was making Emily laugh by creating funny faces with the pancakes. The scene was so domestic, so perfect, that it made her heart ache. Can I think about it?" "Of course. But we'd need an answer by the end of the week. This opportunity won't be available for long." When Sophia hung up, her hands were shaking. Emily ran up to her, syrup still stuck to her fingers. "Sophia, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Oliver approached, reading Sophia's expression with the intuition he'd developed. "Bad news?" "No," Sophia said slowly. "Good news, actually. Very good." But the tone of her voice didn't match the words. That night, after Emily went to bed, Sophia told Oliver about the proposal. They were sitting on the living room couch, but there was a distance between them that hadn't existed in weeks. New York, Oliver repeated, as if testing the weight of the words. That's far. 1,200 miles, Sophia confirmed. She'd checked. It's an incredible opportunity. It is. It's what you've always wanted professionally. Sophia looked at him. It's what I thought I wanted. Before us. The silence stretched between them, full of everything they weren't saying. So you should take it, Oliver said finally, but there was tension in his voice. Oliver, no, seriously. Sophia, you're 28 years old. You can't put your career on hold because of a widowed man and his daughter. The way he said it, as if they were a burden, made something break inside Sophia. Is that how you see our situation? Like I'm putting my life on hold? It's not how I see it, Oliver said, running his hands through his hair. But it's how you might see it 5 years from now, and I can't live with the possibility of you resenting us. So you're making the decision for me? I'm trying to be realistic. Realistic or afraid? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Oliver stood abruptly and walked to the window, looking out at the yard where Emily had played with Sophia just hours before. Of course I'm afraid, he admitted. I'm terrified. Because I allowed myself to love again, and now I might lose everything once more. Sophia felt tears burn her eyes. You won't lose me, won't I? Sophia, you were barely settled in your new life when we showed up. I had no right to complicate everything for you. You didn't complicate things, you made everything clearer. Oliver turned to face her. So what are you going to do? The question Sophia had been avoiding confronting was finally on the table. She thought about her nearly empty bank account, the small apartment she rented, the uncertainty of building a life based on the night shift at a 24-hour cafe. Then she thought about Emily calling her almost mom, about Oliver laughing while they cooked together, about the sense of belonging she'd found. I don't know, she said honestly, and that terrifies me. The next morning, Oliver was different, polite but distant, as if he were protecting himself in advance from Sophia's departure. Emily noticed immediately. Why are you two being weird? She asked during breakfast, looking suspiciously between the two adults. We're not being weird, sweetheart, Oliver said, but his voice sounded forced. Yes, you are. Sophia, you're not really smiling. And Daddy is using his important meeting voice. Sophia looked at Oliver, seeing in him the same tense, closed-off man who used to arrive at the Midnight Bean months before, as if he were preparing to go back to carrying the world alone on his shoulders. Emily, Sophia said carefully, sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions about their lives. What kind of decisions? Sophia hesitated, not wanting to lie but not knowing how to explain without hurting the girl. Sophia might have to move for a new job, Oliver said with an overly controlled voice. Emily was very quiet for a long moment. Then her eyes filled with tears. Are you going away like Mommy did? Sophia's heart shattered. Oh, sweetheart, it's not like that. Yes, it is, Emily exploded. Everyone I love goes away. First Mommy, now you. She ran upstairs, and the sound of the bedroom door slamming echoed through the house like a gunshot. Sophia and Oliver sat in silence in the kitchen, the weight of the situation settling between them like a brick wall. I need to go to work, Oliver said finally, avoiding Sophia's eyes. Oliver, we need to talk about this. What's there to talk about? You have an incredible opportunity. Emily and I will be fine. We always are. But when he left to take Emily to school, and Emily, who refused to look at Sophia, his shoulders were curved with the familiar weight of loneliness. And Sophia knew that whatever her decision, it would change everything forever. The question was she willing to bet on love or on security? The following 3 days were the longest of Sophia's life. Oliver had completely withdrawn, returning to the closed-off version of himself she'd known at the beginning. He would arrive at the Midnight Bean at exactly 11 p.m., order his black coffee, no cinnamon, and sit in tense silence until he finished the drink. Sophia's attempts to start conversations were met with cold politeness and monosyllabic responses. Emily was different too. When Sophia showed up at the house on Wednesday for their usual dinner, the girl treated her with an icy courtesy that hurt more than any shouting could have. Hi, Miss Sophia, Emily said formally, as if they were meeting for the first time. Emily, sweetheart. Daddy said you're going away to New York. Is it far from here? Sophia looked at Oliver, who was too busy fussing with empty pots to meet her eyes. It's far, yes. So, you won't be able to have dinner with us anymore. Emily? It's okay, Emily said with a forced maturity that broke Sophia's heart. I understand. Work is more important than family. At least, that's what Daddy always says. The barb hit its mark. Sophia saw Oliver stiffen, but he said nothing. Dinner was silent torture. Emily ate mechanically. Oliver avoided eye contact, and Sophia felt like she was watching the dissolution of everything she'd come to love. When it was time for Emily to go to bed, she hugged Sophia briefly. A goodbye hug, not a goodnight one. Take care of yourself in New York, Emily whispered. I hope you'll be very happy there. After Emily went upstairs, Sophia and Oliver sat in the living room in a silence that pulsed with resentment and hurt. So this is how it's going to be, Sophia asked finally. You're going to punish me for the next 3 days until I make a decision? I'm not punishing you. No? Then what is this? Because the man I fell in love with wouldn't treat me like a stranger. Oliver finally looked at her, and there was raw pain in his eyes. The man you fell in love with shouldn't have put you in this position. What position? Having to choose between love and ambition? Having to choose, period. Sophia, you were rebuilding your life. You had plans, dreams, a career ahead of you. And then I showed up with all my emotional baggage and a child who's already lost one mother figure. Stop. Sophia stood abruptly. Stop talking like you're both a burden. Emily isn't emotional baggage. She's an incredible little girl. And you're not a broken man, you're someone who had the courage to love again. But I didn't have the right to ask you to love back. You didn't ask, Sophia exploded. I chose, just like I'm choosing now. Choosing what? You, both of you, this life we built together. Oliver went still. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm going to turn down the New York proposal. No. Oliver shook his head vigorously. No, Sophia, you can't do that. Why not? Because 5 years from now, when the novelty wears off, you'll regret it. You'll look at your stagnant career, your missed opportunities, and you'll blame us. You have no idea what I'll feel 5 years from now. Yes, I do, because I've lived it, Oliver shouted, and it was the first time Sophia had seen him completely lose his composure. You think Clara never had to make choices? She was a lawyer, Sophia, junior partner at one of the biggest firms in the city. When Emily was born, she chose to reduce her hours, turn down promotions, focus on family. And did she regret it? She never said she did. But I could see it sometimes. When former colleagues got promoted, when interesting cases passed her by. There were moments when I knew she wondered, what if? Sophia sat back down, the weight of the revelation settling in. That's why you're pushing me away. Because you're afraid I'll become like Clara. I'm afraid you'll become resentful, like I did. The confession came out as a whisper, but hit Sophia like thunder. Resentful of what? Oliver ran his hands over his face. Of her last months. When the cancer came back and she talked about all the cases she never took, all the trips she never made, all the things she postponed for later. His voice broke. She died wondering if she'd wasted her life taking care of us. Sophia felt tears streaming down her face. Oliver, so yes, I'm afraid. Because I can't spend the rest of my life wondering if I was the reason you didn't fulfill your dreams. What if my dream changed? Sophia asked softly. What if what I want now isn't a career in New York but a life here with you? How can I be sure? How can you be sure? Sophia got up and walked to where Oliver was sitting. She knelt in front of him, forcing him to look at her. Because for the first time in my life, when I think about the future, I see faces, not just achievements or titles or salaries. I see Emily learning to drive and wanting me to be there. I see you with gray hair, still making pancakes on Sunday mornings. I see the three of us growing old together. Sophia, I know you're scared, I am too, but Oliver, love doesn't come with guarantees. Clara didn't die because she chose family over career. She died because sometimes terrible things happen, and all we can do is make the time we have as precious as possible. Oliver held her face in his hands. Are you sure? Absolutely sure. I'm sure I want to find out what our story looks like. I'm sure that 1,200 miles away isn't how I want to find out if what we feel is real." They kissed then, a desperate kiss full of fear and hope and love and all the words they couldn't say. When they separated, Oliver rested his forehead against hers. What if it doesn't work out? What if it does? He smiled then, the first genuine smile she'd seen in days. "Emily will be over the moon. So you want me to stay? I want you to choose to stay. Not for me, not for Emily, but for you. Because it's what you really want." Sophia took a deep breath. "Then tomorrow morning I'm going to call New York and turn down the proposal." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure that the love I feel for both of you is worth any risk." And as they embraced in the living room full of Clara's memories and promises of a future together, Sophia knew she had made the right choice. Now they just had to hope Emily would forgive them for almost destroying everything. Sophia couldn't sleep that night. She lay in her small bed in the apartment that suddenly seemed even smaller, mentally rehearsing the call she would make in the morning. The words spun in her mind. "Thank you for the opportunity, but I've decided to stay where I am." Simple as that. But she knew nothing about that decision was simple. At 7 a.m., before she could lose her nerve, she dialed Jennifer Walsh's number. "Jennifer, this is Sophia Martinez, about the New York proposal." "Ah, Sophia, I hope you have good news for me." Sophia took a deep breath. "Actually, I need to decline. I know it's an incredible opportunity, but my life is here now." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Are you sure? This is a chance that might not come around again." "I know, and I appreciate the confidence, but I'm certain of my decision." After hanging up, Sophia felt strangely light, as if she'd released a weight she didn't know she'd been carrying. She had chosen. For the first time in years, she had chosen what she wanted, not what she thought she should want. The next step was scarier: facing Emily. Sophia arrived at the Morrison house at 4 p.m., carrying ingredients for Emily's favorite chocolate cake, an attempt at a peace offering. Oliver opened the door and she could see in his eyes that he'd slept as little as she had. "How do you feel?" he asked softly. "Like I jumped off a cliff without knowing if there was a safety net below," she admitted. "But good. Definitely good." Emily appeared at the top of the stairs, still wearing her school uniform. When she saw Sophia, her expression closed into the mask of formal courtesy she'd used the night before. "Hi, Miss Sophia," she said, descending the steps with exaggerated dignity for a 6-year-old. "Emily," Sophia said, kneeling to get to the girl's eye level, "I need to talk to you about something very important. If it's about New York, I already know. Daddy explained that work is important and that adults have to make difficult choices." Sophia looked at Oliver, who shrugged with an expression that said, "I tried to soften it as much as possible. It is about New York, yes, but maybe Daddy didn't tell you the whole story." Emily crossed her little arms. "What part?" "The part where I said no." Emily blinked, as if she wasn't sure she'd heard correctly. "You... what?" "I turned down the job. I decided to stay here, with you." Emily's mask of dignity crumbled instantly. "Really, you're not going away?" "I'm not going away if you still want me here, of course." Emily didn't respond with words. Instead, she ran into Sophia's arms with a force that almost knocked them both over. Sophia held her tight, feeling the girl's tears wet her neck. "I thought you didn't love us enough to stay," Emily sobbed. "Oh, sweetheart," Sophia whispered, stroking Emily's curly hair. "I love you more than enough. Much more than enough. But what about your important job?" Sophia pulled back slightly to look Emily in the eyes. "You know what I discovered? The most important job isn't necessarily the one that pays the most money or looks the most impressive. Sometimes it's the one that makes your heart feel at home." "And does your heart feel at home here?" "Completely at home." Emily turned to Oliver. "Daddy, did you hear? Sophia's staying. She chose us." Oliver approached, wrapping both of them in his arms. "I heard, sweetheart, and I'm very, very happy." "Now can we be a real family?" Emily asked hopefully. Sophia and Oliver looked at each other over the girl's head. There was so much they still needed to discuss, so many practical details to work out. But looking into Oliver's eyes, Sophia saw the same certainty she felt in her own heart. "Yes, sweetheart," Oliver said softly, "I think we can." That night, after Emily fell asleep, too happy to make any fuss about bedtime, Sophia and Oliver sat on the front porch. The scent of Clara's roses hung in the air, but this time it didn't seem melancholy. It felt like a blessing. "No regrets?" Oliver asked, holding Sophia's hand. "None," she replied with conviction. "And you? Are you still afraid I'll resent this?" Oliver considered the question seriously. "A little, but I realized something today. Clara didn't die regretting the choices she made. She died knowing she had loved completely and been completely loved. And if someday you do regret staying, at least we'll know it was a choice made from love, not fear." Sophia leaned over and kissed him softly. "I love you, Oliver Morrison, and I love our complicated life, our stubborn daughter, and our house full of memories and promises." "Our daughter?" Oliver asked with a smile. "Well, she calls me almost Mom. I think I'm already halfway to officially being part of this family." "Actually," Oliver said, hesitating for a moment before continuing, "about that, Sophia, I know it's early. I know we have time. But I need you to know that when I think about the future, our future, I don't just see dating or eventually living together." Sophia felt her heart race. "What do you see?" "I see marriage. I see a small ceremony where Emily can be our flower girl. I see maybe more children if you want them. I see growing old together in this house. I see grandchildren playing in the garden that Clara planted." Tears streamed down Sophia's face, but they were tears of pure happiness. "Are you proposing to me?" "Not now, not yet. But I'm saying I want to propose. When the time is right, when you're ready. I'm saying you're not just the woman I love, you're the woman I want to spend the rest of my life with." "Oliver," Sophia whispered, her voice full of emotion, "I was so sure that true love was a fantasy, that family was something that happened to other people. And now? Now I know that sometimes the best things in life come disguised as midnight coffee with lonely strangers." They laughed, remembering those first weeks of shy glances and silences loaded with meaning. "Who could have imagined," Oliver said, "that it would all start with cinnamon in coffee?" "The cinnamon was just the beginning," Sophia replied. "What really brought us together was recognizing that neither of us wanted to keep carrying life alone." When they finally went inside to sleep, Sophia knew she had made the most important decision of her life. Not just about New York, but about how she wanted to live, with enough courage to love completely, even knowing that love always comes with risks. And as she fell asleep next to the man she had chosen and thought about the girl sleeping upstairs, Sophia felt something she hadn't felt in years: complete peace. She was finally home. 6 months later, the Midnight Bean had become much more than a 24-hour cafe for Sophia, Oliver, and Emily. It had transformed into a sacred sanctuary, the place where their love story truly began and where they now celebrated their most precious family traditions. It was a sunny Saturday morning in April, and table 12, that same corner table where Oliver used to sit alone carrying the weight of the world, now accommodated 3 people radiating happiness. The scene was almost surreal in its perfection. Emily, now 6½, sitting on a cushion to reach the table properly, carefully stirring her hot chocolate with melting marshmallows. Oliver held his familiar cup, but the coffee now always came with cinnamon, no longer the bitter black of his lonely days. And Sophia, who had traded her employee apron for casual weekend clothes, savored her artisan cappuccino while watching her family with eyes full of love. "Sophia," Emily said, carefully wiping a chocolate mustache from her upper lip, "do you remember the first time you made special coffee for Daddy?" Sophia smiled, exchanging a loving look with Oliver. "I remember perfectly. It was on a rainy night when your daddy arrived soaked and needed something comforting. And you put cinnamon, because Grandma said it was like a hug in a cup," Emily completed, knowing the story by heart. It was one of her favorites, told and retold so many times it had become part of the family mythology. "Exactly," Oliver said, reaching across the table to hold Sophia's hand. "And it was that night I realized Sophia wasn't just someone who served coffee. She was someone who really saw people." Emily swung her legs under the table, a sign she was about to make one of her profound observations. "Marcy said you two were meant for each other, that sometimes the universe puts the right people in the right places at the right time." "Marcy is very wise," Sophia laughed, remembering her work colleague who had become a sort of honorary aunt to Emily. She also said I was the most efficient Cupid she'd ever seen because I made you both realize you wanted to be a family, Emily added with evident pride. Oliver pretended to consider this seriously. I think she's right. You definitely helped us see what was really important. The conversation was interrupted when Marcy approached the table, carrying a tray with special treats. Heart-shaped cookies she had prepared especially for the Saturday morning Morrison family tradition, as she had fondly nicknamed it. "Aunt Marcy's special cookies," Emily exclaimed, clapping her hands. "With extra cinnamon, exactly how you like them," Marcy said, winking at Sophia. "And Emily, sweetheart, I have a surprise for you." Emily straightened up, curious. Marcy pulled a small miniature apron from her pocket, decorated with drawings of coffee cups and hearts. "I thought you might want to help Sophia make the special hot chocolate today, like a little barista in training." Emily's eyes widened with excitement. "Can I, Sophia? Can I really help?" "Of course you can, sweetheart," Sophia said, feeling her heart expand. "Actually, I was thinking it's time for you to learn how to make the perfect hot chocolate. It's an important skill in the Morrison family." "In the Morrison-Martinez family," Emily automatically corrected, using the compound name she had insisted everyone use since the official engagement the month before. Oliver and Sophia exchanged another look, loaded with love. Sophia's engagement ring, a simple, elegant solitaire that Oliver had chosen with Emily's enthusiastic help, gleamed softly in the morning light streaming through the cafe windows. As Emily and Sophia headed to the counter for the hot chocolate lesson, Oliver remained at the table, watching the two most important people in his life. There was something almost mystical about the way Sophia taught Emily, with infinite patience and genuine interest in the girl's endless questions. There was no condescension in her voice, no rush in her movements. It was pure love in action. "First we heat the milk until it's nice and creamy but not boiling," Sophia explained, while Emily watched every movement with scientific concentration. "How do you know when it's the right temperature? You see these little bubbles around the edges? When they start to appear, it's the perfect time. And the chocolate powder goes in now." "Not yet. First comes the special secret." Emily leaned closer, as if she were about to receive ultra-secret information. "What secret?" Sophia lowered her voice conspiratorially. "A tiny pinch of cinnamon, as always, but also," she paused for dramatic effect, "a tiny drop of vanilla extract and a little spoon of honey." "Why?" "The vanilla makes the chocolate richer, and the honey makes everything smoother and tastier. But do you know what the most important ingredient is?" Emily shook her head, completely captivated. "Love," Sophia said simply. "When you make something with love for people you love, it always tastes better." Back at the table, Oliver felt tears burn his eyes. He thought of Clara, and for the first time in years, the thought came accompanied only by gratitude, without the piercing pain he used to feel. He knew without a shadow of doubt that Clara would approve of Sophia. More than that, she would love her for the way Sophia loved Emily, for the way she had brought joy back to their family. "Daddy, Daddy, come see my hot chocolate," Emily called from the counter, holding a small mug with evident pride. Oliver joined them, and Sophia naturally put her arm around his waist. "How's our chef in training?" "She's a natural," Sophia said, kissing the top of Emily's head. "I think we have a future barista in the family." "Or a chef, or a food scientist," Emily added, always expanding her possibilities. "Or all of that," Oliver said, lifting Emily for a hug. "You can be anything you want to be." "I know," Emily said with the complete confidence of unconditionally loved children. "But for now, I just want to be part of the Morrison-Martinez family and make hot chocolate with marshmallows every Saturday." "That's a perfect plan," Sophia said, and her voice was slightly hoarse with emotion. They returned to the table, now with 4 cups, 3 of the traditional drinks and a new addition, Emily's special hot chocolate, complete with heart-shaped marshmallows that Marcy had found at a specialty store. "A toast," Oliver said, raising his cup. "To what?" Sophia asked. "To chance encounters, second chances, and the love that transforms strangers into family." "And to cinnamon," Emily added, making everyone laugh. "And to cinnamon," they agreed in unison. As they drank their beverages, and Emily chatted about her plans for the rest of the day, which included a picnic in the park, nail painting with Sophia, and helping Daddy plant new flowers in the garden, Sophia looked around the cafe that had been the stage for her personal transformation. Table 12 was no longer a place of solitude, but of communion. The 11 p.m. nights were no longer about escaping reality, but about celebrating real life in all its beautiful complexity. And cinnamon, that simple spice that had started it all, had become the symbol of a family that had found itself at the most unlikely hour, in the most unexpected place. Sophia thought about the New York proposal she had turned down 6 months earlier and didn't feel a hint of regret. Some dreams were worth pursuing at any cost, but some dreams were even better when you discovered them right under your nose, disguised as a nightly routine with strangers who became your family. "Sophia," Emily said suddenly, pulling her from her reverie, "when you and Daddy get married next month, can I make special hot chocolate for all the guests?" "Of course you can, sweetheart. It will be an honor to have our official hot chocolate specialist taking care of the special drinks. And can I teach other kids too, so they can make it for their families?" Sophia and Oliver looked at each other, once again touched by Emily's natural generosity. "That's a beautiful idea," Sophia said. "Maybe we could start a small weekend class here at the cafe, Cooking with Love, Emily's special hot chocolate class." Emily applauded, practically vibrating with excitement at the possibility. And so, on a sunny Saturday morning, at a corner table in the Midnight Bean, 3 people who had started as lonely strangers discovered they had built something rare and precious, a true home, seasoned with cinnamon and sealed with unconditional love. Sometimes the most beautiful stories begin in moments when we least expect to be saved. Sophia entered the Midnight Bean running from a past that suffocated her. Oliver arrived every night, carrying grief that seemed impossible to overcome. And Emily was growing up asking why the people we love sometimes go away. 3 wounded souls who met at a coffee table at 11 p.m. and discovered that healing didn't come from forgetting the pain, but from having the courage to love again. The cinnamon in the coffee was just the beginning. The real magic ingredient was the decision to stop hiding and start building something new together. And perhaps that's the most precious lesson, that family isn't just about blood, but about choosing every day to stay, to care, and to transform the broken pieces into something even more beautiful. Because in the end, true love isn't the kind that comes without risks. It's the kind worth betting everything on. If this story touched you in some special way, please leave your like to help us continue sharing stories that speak directly to the heart. Subscribe to the channel for more narratives that celebrate love in all its forms, and tell us in the comments, where are you listening to this message from? Your support is what allows us to keep bringing stories that remind us it's never too late to start over.